listen to this cast, this is stuff you'll appreciate. It's ear candy. Go to patreon.com/DD Unchained. Email your contact information to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com. What is understood need not be discussed. Check out the new podcast, The Rock Quarry, your place to hear in-depth interviews with some of rock's most colorful characters, with your host, entertainment journalist David J. Criblay. The Rock Quarry is available for free on Spreaker and iTunes. You can check us out on Facebook at The Rock Quarry Podcast, on Twitter at Rock Quarry Pod, on Instagram at The Rock Quarry Podcast, or email us at therockquarrypodcast@gmail.com.
From very early on, that it was kind of ingrained on us that if you're doing something that you like, then that is of the utmost importance. Because in our family, there were two opposites. There was my dad, the musician, the guy, the happy-go-lucky guy, you know, and let's have a drink, that type of thing. The other side was our mother. He says, you know, without a suit and tie, you ain't diddly. You know, you're nothing. You come by, you know, visit today or tomorrow, and she'll say, Alex, when are you going to get a job? You know, she's 75. And, Mom, does it really make any difference?
All right, Dave, you know what time it is.
Well, my buddy Dave, he don't want me around. He says he's tired of watching me let him down. He just wants a good mailbag. He wants only the best. But he hates disappointment better than all the rest. And he says that he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble if I don't nail the mailbag intro.
That's right, it's mailbag time again. And we have a nice bunch of letters. We're starting with letter number 1, Dave, coming all the way from Sydney, Australia, from Stephen Halmerick. And he says, "Hi, Dave and Dave. Steve from Sydney here. That could be my new nickname. 2 things I wanted to ask. KISS have announced that they are touring Australia in November this year, COVID depending, as part of their latest farewell tour. Any word if David Lee Roth will be supporting them like he did in the States? There has been no mention of David Lee Roth touring in the local press. Second, who do you think has the most influence on Wolf's new music? I know he said many times that his favorite band is AC/DC, well, at least the band he and Ed enjoyed together, but Wolf's new music sounds nothing like AC/DC. To me, Wolf's music has a real 1990s sound to it. Do you think that comes from his association with Mark Tremonti, who of course has an influence back from the 90s with Creed? I think I am correct in saying that the drummer from Tremonti is also in Mammoth WVH. Thanks, and keep up the great podcast. Stephen Halmerick from Sydney, Australia." Well, Steve, number 1, David Lee Roth will not be supporting KISS in Australia. In fact, I looked it up for you. Wolf Mother will be, as well as Tumbleweed. And if you go and want to see KISS, Wolf Mother is a fantastic band, so definitely want to check that out. In Townsville, you're getting both, and in Brisbane, it's just Wolf Mother. Number 2, Wolf's music is clearly a blend of commercial pop stuff like Blink-182 and Jimmy Eat World, along with heavy stuff like Tool and Black Sabbath. And he does have some sort of AC/DC hooks a little bit in there, but it's not exactly like them for sure. And number 3, Garrett Whitlock on drums is definitely from Tremonti. He was in Tremonti from 2011 to 2018. Dave, what do you have to say?
Wow, you hit the nail on the head on everything. I was going to say, I think Wolf's music is somewhere between 1990s and 2000. If you're looking for a decade to point to, it's somewhere in there. But, you know, it just rocks.
Number 2, letter number 2 comes from John Citrone. And he has a nickname, but we're going to save it for the end because it's sort of a special nickname. And it's
Citrone.
Oh, Citrone?
Come on, he gave you the pronunciation for crying out loud.
You're right. You know what?
An Italian name. Come on.
And just like your name, Marconi, Citrone. Look at that.
Come on. I know it's late.
This is part of the shtick.
I'm supposed to be the tired one. one.
Oh, wait a second. Who wanted to start an hour later tonight?
I did. I did. Well, that's what time I thought we were starting.
You are unbelievable.
But come on, man. People are giving you the pronunciation.
You're right. No,
you are
100% right. I glazed over it. I apologize. John E. Citroni from Jacksonville, Florida. Hey, boys. Longtime listener, first-time writer. I am sure you have seen the Panama Outtakes video that recently resurfaced, and the date stamp says it was posted back in 2017, but it's recently making the rounds again with tons of unearthed Van Halen footage, much of which you guys have covered in depth in the past episodes. But in the Outtakes video, during Alex and his drum storage portion, there is a banner on the wall that reads, "Fuck Bruce." And it can be clearly seen about 14 minutes and 25 seconds into the video, along with other places in the clip. And sleuths that you often prove to be, I am wondering if you have any leads on who Bruce is and why he should be fucked. And he also says, I need a Van Halen handle. How about John Bruce Fucker Citroni? That's John E. Citroni from Jacksonville, Florida. Number one, I don't know if that's a good nickname for you. Bruce Fucker, I think you might want to try something a little more clever than that. That's a little harsh. However, I believe that is Bruce Springsteen, and I'll tell you why. Because at the time, Van Halen was competing on the charts with Born in the USA, and Born in the USA was really dominating at the time when it came out. Dancing in the Dark and Jump also competing singles as biggest songs of the year there. My guess, and my educated guess, would be that is Bruce. What do you think, Dave?
I had no idea, so I think that is as good of a guess as any.
Well, we're going to go with that. On to letter number 3, coming from David Storm in Orlando, Florida. He says, Dave and Dave, no nickname here. My parents blessed me with David Storm. Got to give it to him. That's a great name. It's a rock star name. So really appreciate the podcast, and I've been digging into the past episodes during the lockdown doldrums, and I was hunting for insights into the Jack Daniels bass as I was building a replica, and your interview with Doogie was helpful. I love how you guys ask insightful questions and don't shy away from your opinions and express the passions of true lifelong fans while being open to new music and ideas. I was watching Eddie's interview at the Smithsonian for what it means to be an American and was fascinated by the immigrant story of Eddie and Alex Roth, whose grandparents are from Russia, Anthony's parents are from Poland, and they all end up moving to California. Incredible story, and I wondered if you'd be interested in diving into that deeper. I appreciated very much your discussion. Is Van Halen a metal band? For me, they are not. They are hard rock. As you discussed, they did serve into the lane in the 1983 to 1985 period, but what always separated them from heavy metal and hair metal was their sense of humor and fun. Last thing, I am working on the Jack Daniels replica for 1984, the ultimate tribute to Van Halen in Central Florida, Orlando area, which is coming out of COVID lockdown for June 6th for a tribute to rock and roll at the Alley. And we'd be honored if you could mention the gig and give some Central Florida fans an opportunity to hear the greatest rock and roll played by musicians who take it seriously and have a blast doing it. Tickets are at thealleylive.com, and we are at facebook.com/1984 Van Halen Tribute. Looking forward to hearing more from both of you, and thanks for what you do. David Storm in Orlando, Florida. Well, Dave, it's great to hear from you. Thank you so much for the kind words. I'm sure we will get into that Smithsonian interview. I'd like to definitely pinpoint that one day. I don't know when we will do it, but it's definitely a deep dive that needs to be done. That's definitely an interesting thing. Number 2, Van Halen is definitely not a hair band. However, they certainly inspired hair bands. In my opinion, Van Halen is a 70s rock band who evolved in the 80s. They're sort of interesting because they're very much a bridge from 70s rock into 80s rock, but that whole hair band thing became way more of a whole other genre than Van Halen, but certainly inspired by Van Halen. What do you think, Dave?
I don't think Van Halen was a hair metal band, but I think they were very inspiring to hair metal bands. I think they had hair metal tendencies, especially towards the 1984 period, as Dave pointed out, or as David pointed out. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they are, but I waffle sometimes because they were certainly the forerunners of it. And they were certainly making some metal-like music in the 80s during that time. They aren't completely absent from it.
They set the table for it, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
That's a fair way of saying it.
Yeah.
That's a fair way of saying it.
Yeah, definitely. So now, letter number 4 comes from Rick Bellaccio. How's that, Dave? Is that better? A little Rick Bellaccio? Does that sound a little more Italian for you? Rick Bellaccio. There we go. So, hey, guys.
There you go.
Hey guys, I heard a little bit about the cover being the same as Wolfgang's from you guys and from letters from others that had wrote in. He's talking about Wolfgang Van Halen's new album, Mammoth WVH, self-titled album coming out on June 11th, having the same cover as Violent Eve's album from 2016. I finally went to Spotify to check it out. My guess is Wolf decided to use this album cover. Then if he found out it had been used by Violent Eve, he went to Spotify, saw that no one listens to them, and said fuck it and decided to use it anyway. Violent Eve's music may be good for some ears, but it is unlistenable to me. Their most popular song has less than 4,000 total downloads, and I'm guessing many could be attributed to Wolfgang's decision to use the artwork anyway. Had they been even remotely successful by any measure, he would have probably reconsidered. Wolf did them a huge favor, though looking at the number of downloads, I say not huge enough. Peace and chicken grease, Rick Bellaccio, and that's letter number 4. And my guess is that Wolf found out after the fact. That is totally my guess. That he found out after he used the image, set up the merch, and everything, and it was too late. However, it wasn't addressed. It doesn't seem to be something people are bringing up with him, but it doesn't matter how popular the band is, in my opinion. It was used. It exists online. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. So I don't know if the band is huge, if it's not huge, if that really matters. I mean, it's used, so I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
I don't know anything about the band or their music, but I would bet along with you that Wolf found out after the fact.
Yep, it has that vibe.
You know, I mean, whatever at this point, like, you'd already been committed to using it, and, you know, what does it matter, really, at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, what does it matter? Letter number 5 comes from John McDonald from Melbourne, Australia. Wow, really going down under this one. On the subject of proposed name changes when Sammy joined the band, I'd suggested that there was more than pride in the family name driving the brothers' resistance to the idea. The notion that Van Hagar name was mooted has been suggested many times over the years and attributed to various people. I dare say the fact that the name of the band was also Eddie and Alex's surname, allowing them easy access to the moral high ground during the debate. The real issue was surely the value in an established band name with millions of album sales under its belt and a reluctance to take the risk of starting over with a new name. They didn't seem to use the term brand value as much back then, but it's more or less the same consideration. I think Quiet Dave has the right end of the stick on this one. On to that point, I find it highly surprising that Warner Brothers pushing for the commercially riskier option. They took the opposing approach with Black Sabbath over more or less the same time frame. At least one of Sab's 80s albums was irrefutably originally intended as a Iommi solo project, and depending on who you believe, the Dio era albums and at least 2 subsequent releases were also intended to be under different names. Each time, the suits played safe with the Sabbath moniker. I suppose it's possible that Warner Brothers had more faith in the strength of the material in the 5150 than in Seventh Star, Born Again, et al. So, a higher degree of confidence in its commercial potential as a standalone entity. If that's the case, few would argue the logic. It sounds, though, that it's being suggested all the chest beating happened before the recording process was even underway. However, the case that you'd expect the corporate behemoth to be the one who is more inclined to stay the course with a proven, successful entity. John McDonald, Melbourne, Australia. This is what I think here, John. I think the identity of David Lee Roth is what was causing the whole issue. Although Ed and Al were named Van Halen, and obviously, always been, but Dave's image, his physical look, everything was tied to the Van Halen name. The reason I think they floated the Van Hagar thing as a possible name for the band with Sam is they figured if the Van Halen Hagar situation flopped, they could still have that Van Halen name to go back to and keep that format. This really was stemming from Ted, and I believe he mentions that in his book. Ted was under the impression that this Sammy thing was very temporary and that they were just going to get back back with Dave, which always blew my mind when I read that book. I didn't understand how he saw that, but that was the view he seemed to have there. It's really interesting, that perspective. The band even said it, that the members of the Warner Brothers company weren't all that confident. Warner Brothers was pretty skeptical. The band was very confident in the material, but there wasn't a massive promotional campaign for 5150, if you remember, Dave. It's not like it was downplayed,